You're listening to Pop This, the podcast where two women talk about everything pop culture. Here are your hosts, Lisa Christiansen and Andrea Warner.
So here we are, just into January, and I want to know if you made any resolutions.
No, I don't do resolutions. It's just not my thing.
Because you're so perfect, really.
No.
I mean, there's nothing really to improve on.
There's literally nothing to improve on. I am just a goddess. No, I just like resolutions feel to me like people that is like where people like make promises to themselves. Like weirdly enough, like. And break them immediately. So many resolutions are also so diet-based, and I'm always like, die. Just don't diet, just die. And that's also harsh feelings, but that's how I feel.
Maybe you should make a resolution to be kinder to people in the new year.
Refuse.
Okay,
Totally refuse.
She's kind of
just
not.
spitballing here.
It's just fine.
No, it's so weird because I think I'm still in that mind frame where September feels to me like the beginning of a new year, even though I haven't been in school in like 18 years.
Yes. I have the same problem. On that same line, do you also think that you should get July and August off, even though you have not for decades?
Right.
Every year I'm like, oh, this is going to be great. All summer, nothing to do.
And
What do you mean?
Do you need to go buy loose leaf paper in September?
Right?
I love getting new stationery in September.
Yes,
That's
I do.
always like honestly,
A
when
pen
Muji
bag
opened up in Vancouver, Muji stationery, so great, guys.
Yeah,
so great.
I've got some.
The summer months, I guess because I always hated the sun, I was always just like, keep me in a library. That's all. I'm going to sign up for every day camp that has me looking through the like folios. That's all I want.
The folios. That's quite a summer camp there. Gee, I'm surprised I never signed up for
Folio
that
summer
one.
camp, you know.
Folio summer camp. Learn the Dewey Decimal System,
What was
kids.
the camp song at Camp Folio?
Paper cuts are fun.
Let's head down to the stacks now.
Oh my God. Making out in the stacks at a summer camp would be such a great time. Honestly, that's what a dream. I'm just I am writing a teen romance right now in my head.
Or you could be writing the beginning of Ghostbusters when the witch or the big
Very
ghost comes out
scary.
of the stacks, right?
Yeah. No, you're right. That's right.
Yeah.
Okay, it's already
Terrified
been
me.
done. All right.
I
So
think there was a lot of making out with that ghost. So I
No.
think you're still good.
Yeah.
No, yeah. I mean, unless your version of making out having ectoplasm vomited on your face, which I'm sure is someone's
That
kink.
can be
That's
fun.
fine.
Yeah, we don't judge.
So resolutions. Yeah.
Yeah, no,
not for
I
me.
don't. I mean,
That's a long answer to your very simple question.
Yeah, I like just the idea of like a new daytimer.
Oh, yeah,
I
yeah.
still like buying a Moleskine daytimer.
Yeah.
1 page per day.
Sure.
And but I always like kind of use them backwards. So, wow, I got some good body language there. Like, tell me more.
Do tell.
Morgan needs
Color
more
me
information.
intrigued.
So, I mostly use my phone to remind me of things.
As I do. Yes, I know. Yes.
More recently,
Sure.
I would say. There's been some.
I
Conflicting
often have
schedules.
Lisa's
I picked up on
schedule
that.
in my head as well as my
Yeah,
own. So,
yeah. There's a few issues there, but I've been working hard. I've been better.
You've been great.
I've been great. Okay,
Yeah.
well, great. But anyway, I try to use my phone, but on my daytimer, I try to like think back of the things I did and like write down what I spent money on. Did I remember? Did I do that thing? So I use it kind of like a way to like celebrate my achievements, even if they're extremely small. Like
That's nice.
put out
That's good.
garbage,
Yeah.
as opposed to put out the garbage. I put out the garbage.
It's like a diary of your day.
Yeah, it's like a diary of my day without like the usual diary that I write, which is just here's how you failed again. These
It's like a reverse to-do list.
Yeah, these
Yeah.
are the things you succeeded in.
That's
That's
great.
so good.
Yeah.
So you can write those like I got all of this done today. And then you even sometimes, and this is so silly of me because no one else sees it. Sometimes I put a box and check it.
I love that.
But it's a day late.
That's
it's
fine.
like from the
It's
day
satisfying.
before. But
It's
then I
so
forget
satisfying.
later when I look back. And so there I am in February remembering everything. Like those boxes are all checked.
Like I really took the garbage out that day.
I took the wow, you made that sound like
No, like sexy. Was that what you meant?
yeah, something happened there. Like
You love a checklist, right? Like
I love a
yeah,
checklist. I do the same, and I do the little boxes, and then I get so mad if I haven't put something on my list, and then I do it because then I can't check it off, and so then I put it, and then I add it.
See, then
and
you
then cross
add it,
off.
yeah.
Yeah.
So I think I'll just do the same thing every year.
Yeah.
I make the same resolutions every year. I always say it's like Daft Punk, better, stronger, faster.
Uh-huh.
I
That's
mean,
nice. Do you make resolutions, Morgan?
No, I mean, I plan to in like November, right? I'm always like, okay, December, I'm gonna get all the stuff done that I didn't get done, so that I go into the new year just ready. All my stuff is done, fresh. Yeah, that's never happens, and that's again this year not happening.
I'm debt free. That's never happened to me either.
No, none of that.
No.
None of that happening. Yeah, I used to, but no. Now I'm just like, oh God, let's struggle through another year,
Well, you're still here, and that was pretty good.
right?
Right? Sometimes that's the.
I put a
Put
lot
that
of
on my
stock
to-do
in the Lunar New Year sometimes because I like that it comes with an astrological bend for me. And so it's always like entering like the
When's
new year.
that?
Like in February, like, the year of the horse, the year of the pig. Like,
that.
right.
Yes.
I
okay.
really like that a lot. And so I like to find out sort of like what
do
it
people
means.
make resolutions? Is that a?
I don't know. I don't
practice with
think I don't
that?
know if people make resolutions. I just like that as like a time of year to be like reflecting on what the year ahead's gonna look like for me.
Oh yeah.
Like sort of thinking about like as a horse, how will I function in the year of the dragon or whatever
Right,
like
right.
the year is that we're having.
And you know what? I should do more of that because that really does kind of get rid of the idea of making resolutions because it's already been planned out. Right? Like, why should I bother?
It's already written in the
I'm either going
the
to
moon.
travel or get married this year or I'm not.
right.
So what is the point in making that a resolution if it's already been set?
I mean, if you're making resolutions to get married, don't get married. That's my one.
But what I really like about those horoscopes, those particular ones for the Lunar New Year, they're
Yeah.
very specific.
Yeah, they're quite
You will
specific.
travel a lot. It's a good time to open a business, generally, or not, right? This is also a good time for marriage and children. It'll always say that.
One of my favorite things for the last several years on LaineyGossip.com, Lainey's mom has done Lunar New Year horoscopes for people. And they're very good. And this past year was her last one. But I love going back, actually. This sounds so dorky. But I love going back and rereading all of her mom's horoscopes for all the years. And just thinking about, like, what did that year look like for me? It's kind of that retro, retroactive to-do
See if
list.
it was, like, it actually worked.
If there was some stuff that, like, sort of resonated, or if it didn't, whatever. But, like, it's always very... it's always very specific and practical and like not always lovey-dovey at all. It can be harsh but fair. And I like that.
I can't remember if I told this story here before, but it's a favorite in a weird way. Years ago, I went to the Folk Fest and my friend and I went for a walk and there was a tarot card reader.
Oh, yeah.
And I was in a transitional spot in my life and I thought, well, let's find out what's the year ahead holds for me. And my friend was like, do you mind if I watch? I'm like, no, that's fine. I mean, I'm going to tell you anyway, and you'll see what happens. And so we shuffle up the cards, and every single card had something to do with work.
Oh, yeah.
And I was like, or love, and he'd be like, nope,
This is work.
And it was so dreary that my friend was like, I might. I'm like, I'm giving you insight into my personal life, and you're bored.
Yeah.
You are bored, and so. And he looked apologetic.
Yeah.
Like, I'm sorry. And I'm like, don't be sorry about telling me about my life, because that's really creepy and mean. And we're all sorry, buddy. Here's your $20 or whatever. And unfortunately, or fortunately, if I could find that man again, it was exactly my year.
Really?
Oh, wow.
Like, that is it. All it
pretty good.
was. I mean, they were good work achievements.
Sure, yeah.
They were fine. Like, but it was that. It was only that.
Honestly, like having one area of your life not be complete disarray, that's okay.
Yeah, no, and you know what? You're right about that. Like, every single card was some sort of, you're very balanced and together now. And but do I want to be? Like, what about a bit of whimsy? What about a little bit of adventure?
Well, that's the problem with that kind of thing, and I have the same problem with horoscopes. Is that my brain goes, well, that's it's written in stone. You don't have a choice, right? And so if it will say, things are going to be tough until the 15th, then you just don't be around me until the 15th because I'm going to be a monster. I remember actually as a teenager. Yeah. As a teenager, one time I read one, and said, this will be a very tough month for you or whatever. And I remember having this total meltdown and crying, and my dad trying to comfort me, and I was like, I'm just having a really rough month. And I realized afterwards, there was nothing wrong with my month, but I'd read it in the horoscope, and I just had been like, well, everything's terrible. Yeah. So I'm too easily influenced by that. I have to not read them.
I understand that. That makes a lot of sense. I mean, and because especially, can you imagine if Mrs. Maisel had read a horoscope that this is gonna be a tough year?
Yeah,
we would have
that if the fortune teller would have told her mom.
Tell
her. Give up comedy. No.
And honestly, every time she went to that fortune teller, I had a good time on that show. Yeah, it made me really happy.
Yes, agreed.
What a segue. I'm Andrea Warner.
I'm Lisa Christiansen.
You're listening to Pop This.
And we are talking about the marvelous Mrs. Maisel.
And we're so excited to have the marvelous Morgan Brayton join us.
Wow, that's nice. That worked really well.
It did. I wish I still had my name tag. When I was 16, I worked at Marvelous Muffins, which you might remember.
I remember them.
Marvelous.
Yes, and I had the 3 M's, and I had a name tag that said Morgan.
Oh my God, that's so cute.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
I was a comedy writer even then.
Yeah. I'm never getting rid of this.
Yeah.
No, you should.
I should have kept it.
Well, let's make you a new one.
Yeah, let's do it.
It's totally fine. I'm going to read Morgan Brayton's bio. Morgan Brayton is a writer and performer who lives in Vancouver with her wife and an excessive number of cats.
How many?
Well, right now there's only 7.
There have been more.
Only 5 of them are ours.
Okay. All right.
A Canadian Comedy Award nominee. She is 1/4 of The Lady Show, which is the best, and we love The Lady Show here. A winners of the Best Variety Show at the Vancouver Comedy Awards and Pick at the Fringe at the Vancouver Fringe Festival. Morgan, thank you so much for coming.
Welcome.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for dressing up in a beautiful frock.
Thank you.
Such a beautiful frock. And the coat.
Maisel-inspired outfit for you. Thank you.
I'm so delighted.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm happy to delight you.
Thank you. I'm also really excited to talk about Mrs. Maisel with a comedy professional.
And all you're choosing those words carefully.
I am not choosing my words carefully.
Funny lady.
I am enunciating it with purpose and meaning.
And everyone laughs.
Comedian.
A comedian professional.
And E at the end.
A comedian professional. We have both watched this show the last couple of years. We're only going to talk about seasons 1 and 2.
3 just launched at the very beginning of December.
Yeah, so we're going to probably not talk a lot about season 3, but season 1 and 2 we're going to talk about. We'll try not to talk about season 3. Namely, I have not seen it. But if Morgan and Lisa want to talk a little bit about it, I'm not going to throw myself against them.
I've only seen half.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great. But we'll talk about season 1 and 2. We'll talk about Mrs. Maisel overall. And we haven't talked about it yet on this show, which is kind of odd for us because honestly, our second episode was about the Gilmore Girls. Yes. We have definitely done we did the Gilmore Girls, reunion show, the Netflix comeback or whatever. I feel like we've talked a lot about Amy Sherman Palladino in general on this show, right. But we have not done Marvelous Mrs. Maisel yet.
Well, now it's lucky. It's lucky.
We needed to wait for you.
Morgan.
You did.
I did honestly know. So, I know it's creepy to be friends with me on Facebook sometimes because I am always noting when people mention a show that they're into. And I had noted that you had Facebooked about Marvelous Mrs. Maisel at some point in the last few months. And I was like, well, I'm going to file that away for future reference. And I did.
Glad you did.
Yeah.
'Cause most of the rest of the stuff is you're not interested in talking about my weird viewing choices.
You have 8 cats or 7 cats. Yeah. Oh, that's... For the record, I don't know all your cat names, but my favorite cat name was the hairdresser I had, and her cat's name was Debbie.
I love human names for cats. We do have one of our foster cats is named Dave.
Dave, see? Yeah. I had a Dave. When I was growing up, we had a Dave cat because I found him on Davie Street. And so we called him Dave. Yeah. And he was a Dave.
Yeah.
Very specifically, not a David.
Yes.
Or a Davey.
Definitely. Yeah. Yeah. I had somebody I knew had a cat named Kevin years ago, and I was that. It's just the best name for a
Right,
cat.
Kevin.
It's the most ridiculous thing ever.
I really love that.
Yeah.
There are a distinct lack of cats on The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel, but it is an American period comedy drama web television series created by Amy Sherman Palladino. It premiered March 17th, 2017 on Amazon Prime. It stars Rachel Brosnahan as Miriam Midge Maisel, a housewife in 1958 New York City who discovers she has a knack for stand-up comedy. Second season came out last year. Third season came out just in December on the 6th. And it's already been renewed for the fourth season, which will premiere next December.
Now, that means a lot of binging must have taken place really quickly. Mm-hmm. Hey, on December 6th?
Yes.
That's how they must know.
Right. Yeah, of course, yeah.
Yeah.
From those numbers, they said, we'll go ahead.
We're in.
Yeah, definitely.
We're in, yeah.
I mean, there was a good amount of hype around it, too.
Sure.
More than I'd noticed before. For season 1, well, obviously 1 we didn't know. Even 2 wasn't. It was like, nah.
Right. No, this one has been big for sure.
I think because it's had 2 seasons of awards as well.
A lot of awards.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
Yeah, like, I mean, I think that kind of stuff, even though, like, we know their awards are a little bit dumb, they do end up getting us talking about them a lot, and a lot about the shows that are recipients of those awards.
But we didn't mention the rest of the cast, and I think we haven't got really to our feelings on the show, but if it didn't have as stellar a cast.
It's an amazing cast.
It really is.
Oh,
yeah.
Sorry. I forgot. Alex Borstein as Susie Meyerson. Michael Zegan as Joel Maisel, who's Midge's estranged husband. Maren Hinkle as Rose Weissman, Midge's mother. And then Tony Shalhoub as Abe Wiseman, Midge's dad.
I just love her dad so much.
I mean, I'm just going to jump right in and say he is my most favorite thing. I mean, Susie number 1, but Abe a very close second. Followed third by the cat in the underground bookstore.
Oh, yeah.
Point,
there is a
wears
cat.
little
You're
hat.
right. There is a cat.
I don't know the cat actor's name.
No,
but
yeah. But you know what? I forgot about that cat, and that's shame on me.
I'm here to remind you of all things cat.
Thank you.
It's I mean, what are your what are your major thoughts?
I really love the show. It's kind of I feel the same way that I used to feel about Woody Allen movies, about Marvelous Mrs. Maisel. It's a world that I am not I haven't spent time in New York. I am very much not Jewish. And it's this world that I don't know anything about that I can escape into, and it's for me it's almost entirely escapism. It's really, I would say, 90% about the outfits.
And the sets are.
It's
the
saturated colors. Yes. It's just so beautiful.
The swing
to
coats.
Look at.
I mean,
coats, the hats, the gloves, the shoes. I'm not a super fashion-y kind of girl, but it shouldn't be why one watches a show 90%. But it really is. It's so beautiful.
It is such a beautiful show. Like I do think, like, I remember watching the trailer for the pilot before. And finding out what was coming and I think it's set to like a musical number, the very first, and I thought that there was going to be, I thought it was going to be both a musical and a stand-up comedy show, and I was like, how do all my favorite things come together? What is happening? And it does not have musical numbers so much, but
it has that tone very much, so that people
could
could break into song and you wouldn't bat an eye.
We'll probably have a musical episode at some point.
I would assume,
to God's ears.
That'd be great. But I do, like, I think, like, the first season of it particularly, I really enjoyed. I thought, I don't think we get enough, like, early feminist fantasy shows, like, 1958. There's going to be sort of like a little bit of, particularly for a character like Midge, who, is 26 or 24 or whatever, and already has 2 kids and has been married for a number of years. But to see like this like hyper competent, confident, cool woman who is so supportive in a really meaningful way of her husband, then get the chance to sort of be her own support system, and have this like giant sort of like reveal to herself of like this almost superpower. Like that's a fairy tale I can kind of get behind.
It's funny you say superpower because I think she's almost a superhero. I had that thought previously, right? Yeah. She's so good at so many things. You know, a lot of it is just entitlement and white privilege.
Sure, yeah.
But a lot of it is, you know, she cooks all the things great, and she knows the right thing to say, and she knows how to talk people into this, and she's the, you know, the perfect staff member and all those kinds of things. She's just really good at everything.
Yeah, she's got a super foul mouth.
And so
and
funny.
Is so funny.
Yeah.
Like, okay, for as a comedian... how does, like, it seems, I watch a lot of stand-up. Yeah. It seems really funny to me.
I don't know.
Okay.
Well, I find the show itself is super funny. I don't find her stand-up sets usually that funny. And, you know, I've thought about this a lot, actually, with other shows. Have you guys done I'm Dying Up Here?
No, not yet. No.
Do that. I'll come back.
Okay.
But, you know, that's the show that, in my opinion, has come the closest to actually replicating what stand-up is actually like on film. There's some, and whether it's because it's actors playing stand-ups, which is it's a very different.
Well, it's also not
vibe.
A stand-up writer writing the material.
That's
like
what I was gonna say.
Amy Sherman Palladino has written the bulk of all the stand-up routines.
She's really.
Yeah, which is why I think they feel more like monologue. Like,
well, this is where she sounds like Lorelai to me.
Yeah.
It's weird. It's like a Gilmore. You know, when you Gilmore Girls.
I'm not a Gilmore Girls person. Okay. No,
yeah.
But like it feels more like just sort of like observational monologues that
absolutely.
Are not specifically strictly stand up.
Well, and I kind of hate the whole premise that she just like there's about 2 or 3 episodes where she's working on her tight 10, but other than that, she just gets up on stage and starts talking and is hilarious and whatever.
She literally starts with a tight 5 that she has done no work on.
Yes. Yeah. And that kind of makes me crazy. Because, like, well, that's not actually how stand-up works. So, you know, that I'm always like a little bit, and I'm sure, I don't know, I think apparently Dave Chappelle does that or something. There are people who can do that and who are hilariously funny, but for the most part, you know, and that's why I brought up I'm Dying Up Here, because there on that show you see the same set several times throughout a season, and you're like, oh, this joke again? And that's what it's like, because you are working the same jokes over and over again. And I love the episodes where you see her do the same joke several times in different sets and hone it and craft it, and, you know, because that is actually what doing stand-up is. Just getting up and spouting off is a form of performance and entertainment, and takes some kind of savant to be able to do it, but it's not really what most stand-ups are doing. So that part of it makes me a little bit crazy. I think the show is hilarious. I think there are so many funny lines, but the stand-up itself, it's not, you know, Sally Field and Punchline awful. It's not, you know, you're not like, oh, this is not funny. It's not like that. But it's not, it doesn't, you know, they're always like, oh, she's so funny, and the audience is going crazy. And I'm like, really?
Another question I wanted to ask a comedian. The Lenny Bruce character, who we didn't mention in the credits here, is such an interesting amalgamation of, like you were saying, like aspirational, like feminist fantasy. Yeah. He's very handsome. I've seen pictures of Lenny Bruce.
He's not a
handsome guy. Not like that, right? Like, what do you think of his role?
I'm so ambivalent about it, honestly. I have that same response of like, Lenny Bruce definitely was not that smooth. Yeah. Like if you watch videos of Lenny Bruce, he's very kind of weird and kind of awkward and kind of like, and he was very much of that sort of like beat poet meets stand up. So he has this kind of jazz kind of way of talking, but it's not in a super smooth, cool guy way like the actor that plays it on Maisel is. So I'm always kind of like, oh, this isn't really, and then I go, well, just don't think about that it's supposed to be Lenny Bruce. It's, like you say, an amalgam of different characters, etc. But it's so interesting to have, I mean, I guess they're establishing about obscenity laws and the history of Lenny Bruce and giving her a champion, of course, to defend her and support her. But it is a bit weird, and it's a bit weird to have he's about like there are references to Mort Saul and
Bob Newhart too.
There's
there's
Bob Newhart, and there are references to Mums Mabley, but there are very few actual portrayals of real people.
Yeah, so I don't know why they
to have
chose
such a
Lenny
key
Bruce.
figure.
Yeah,
and he's just such a, and the way the way he is just like, he's like the super charismatic, handsome man who just keeps popping up whenever you need him. Yeah, like some kind of like animal. Like a cat that just knows when you need some, some affection. Didn't mean to bring it back to cats, but there's something, all of a sudden you feel that by your leg, right? And you're like, what is, and it's Lenny Bruce.
Yeah.
And so I was just curious because he is such an icon. Yeah. For comedians, right? And for a certain kind or for everybody?
I think more for a certain kind, and a lot of the people for whom he is an icon, I think, I always say, like, Lenny Bruce would kick your ass if you heard most of your jokes, That gets a very, like, I'm a truth teller, man, and that gives me license to say all these super offensive,
I use that as my way
things,
to get back at idiot men on Twitter. Yeah. Who are always defending like some jerk for some stupid joke. I'm like, you're not Lenny Bruce.
You're no Lenny Bruce.
I know
absolutely.
what you think. Yeah. You think you're, like you say, you're really
truth
telling
teller.
it like it is. You're not Lenny Bruce. Yeah. Do you know how many people have been Lenny Bruce? Lenny Bruce.
Yeah. Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, okay. But I still like his character.
Yeah, no, definitely. And it is interesting.
World.
It is an interesting sort of, he's like what's the phrase I'm looking for? But it's more than a change. He's like a kind of an angel figure for her.
The guardian angel in a weird way. Yeah.
The comedy guardian angel. Yeah. And he also, what I like about his character, at least so far, because I haven't seen season 3, so I hope I'm not wrong about this, but he's never tried to sleep with her.
Yeah, no,
he's never
is a very
sexualized
specific,
her.
He's married, isn't because
he
his
is
wife
married, yes.
Yeah, but I don't think that.
I'm trying to put on a poker face so that I don't give you anything.
Thank you.
Does not mean he doesn't. Does not mean he doesn't.
I know.
I'm telling you nothing.
In seasons 1 and 2, at the very least, there's no sexual element to their relationship, and we just talked about this with the holiday in terms of like having a older male figure in your life who does not try to sleep with you. What a nice thing. What a nice,
so refreshing.
So refreshing. Yeah. Just someone who wants to mentor you or like talk to you about things, like validate your interests in the world. Yeah. Because they are a professional and have that ability to like validate you. And not simply by virtue of them being men. It's a nice character to have, particularly because, and I know the title is right there, like The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel. We know everyone is supposed to be in love with her. And we know that he does love her in this sort of like admirational way. Mm-hmm. But it's the fact that it doesn't become a wanting to possess her is very nice.
And it really, in terms of the story, it really does establish that history that at that time, because if they didn't have him, she would be Lenny Bruce in this production, right?
Yeah,
because that's
what paved that road for being that kind of person.
Absolutely, and the other comics are not that. They're the Bob Newharts, etc. Right? But what he was arrested repeatedly. He was jailed repeatedly. His life was ruined by the obscenity laws at the time, right? Mm-hmm. So by having him in the story continually being arrested and bailed out and that kind of a thing, I think it really establishes that, which historically we wouldn't have in this series if we didn't have that character.
Yeah, no, you're right. That makes sense. That makes a lot of sense. So as someone who watches it for 90% the costumes and the stand-up is a bit frustrating, how do you feel, because I know how I feel, but how do you feel about like the story of how she makes it to the stage and the estranged husband constantly sort of being... I thought the estranged husband would be written out at the end of season 1. I was not prepared that he would continue to be a massive factor. But I guess that doesn't... I guess, they do have children. Mm-hmm. So that makes sense. Yeah. And I like Joel's evolution up into the end of season 2. I don't know what he's doing in season 3. Yeah. But it's nice to see him sort of come around on some stuff. But I was surprised to the extent of which, like, the first season really is a story about sort of, like... how much he factors into like her story.
Well, it is the 50s.
Oh, well, that's the thing. It is the 50s.
And I mean, her mother's trying to marry her off constantly.
That's true.
So at the very least, keeping him around spares you from the constant...
Oh, yeah, you're right. I hadn't thought about it like that. Yeah.
And the whole thing where she, they go to bed and she pretends to fall asleep. And then once he's asleep, she gets up and takes off her makeup and puts on her cold cream. And then gets up before he wakes up and puts makeup back on.
Yeah.
And there's it really sets the
measuring
tone
her thighs.
The constant measure, the daily measuring.
Oh my God. There's so much depressing about season 1 specifically.
Yeah. But that's what's really, like you said, you like Joel's evolution. And what is really interesting is, and I haven't seen all of season 3, and I don't know if she has an eventual place where, she wants all of these characters to go. But as much as he's the dirtbag that is having the affair and leaves her, they're both not particularly happy in these structured roles that they don't even know why they're in.
Yeah.
And I love that they don't just make him the jerk husband.
No, that's what I mean.
Yeah.
And when they do the flashbacks to their courtship,
yes,
they are so sweet.
Absolutely. And he's very charming.
He's so
I would have fallen
charming
for him,
that
for sure.
going out on the streets and I mean they're and so I love that they gave us a chance to know why she loves him so much.
Yes. Yeah. No, I agree.
But then for him to, he's the one that weirdly has the courage to go, what are we doing here?
Yeah.
Like, this isn't even anything that I want. Mm-hmm. And, she's just been going along with this. Like, well, I didn't know we were allowed to ask that question.
Right.
Was that something, and that is really fascinating.
That is really fun. No, you're right.
Well, and it establishes the idea of comedy as a career as well, because he's saying, when that breakup scene when he's packing his stuff and he's like, what did you think we were doing here? And she's like, I thought it was fun. I'm making notes and making a brisket and helping you. And he had it in his head that he was going to be this comedy star. And he has the realization that that is not a thing that's going to happen for him, which then sets up the idea that this will become her career, not just a fun thing that she does, not just her like dance class, her dance lessons or whatever. Right?
Yeah.
And his support. I mean, at first it's very like bad, he is being horrible, and now to this, you're the best, and it's an interesting to have to be that man, to have to stand up and support this woman.
Well, and I guess that's what I do like. I like how the story has given us time to feel invested in that particular relationship in a way that like other shows probably wouldn't. And I think they've done a lot with Joel that's like, I mean, a lot of credit to the actor, frankly, for doing that kind of like that job to be able to sort of make us, I don't know, just like make us sort of, even though we don't care about his comedy, we care about his relationship to Midge.
Yeah, and I'll have to say, the biggest thing I like about this show more than anything else is the fact that we don't have throwaway parents. Mm-hmm. Because I have seen so many shows like that where they're just the old people that are in the background. Yeah. And I love these fully formed, interesting parents. Joel's parents too. Yeah. I love them.
Everybody's a character though.
Yeah, everybody gets
every single
something.
Character.
Some kind of part, and I especially loved when he was living with that woman and he brings her for dinner.
Oh my God.
And the mother's like, oh, and having such a, and then she's like, no.
While they're in the bathroom, the dad says no.
Yeah,
and then she comes back and it's no. Yeah, and absolutely.
I just love that we have these fully, her parents have lives, the beautiful Paris story about her. Again, another woman going, what am I doing here? How did this become my life? I do not remember signing up for any of this. So
and
I love
Abe
that we
has
have
his,
them.
I think all of them, they're all trying to figure out who they are. And how to be more themselves, right? I mean, obviously that's the main storyline with Midge, but all of the characters are. Like even Imogene and Archie, even they're secondary characters, but they all have these, trying to kind of figure out their place in the world, and also, and I think this is where the relationship with Joel and Midge comes in as well, is it also establishes the changing times, because instead of he takes care of the kids and that kind of a thing, and they there's a whole divorce thing that is untypical of that time, right? So the idea of having more of a partnership rather than the man and the little lady relationship is really it stands out as different and as a sort of harbinger of how the times are changing, I think.
Yeah. And also watching Rose when she came back and took the courses, and being so disappointed with the way women were treated, and he has to stand up for her. Like it's much more like Mad Men. Every episode after, I felt dirty and need to cry.
Right.
But I watched all of them.
Yes. Oh, yeah.
But this one, like you say, it's so beautiful.
Yeah.
So watching all of these truths and things is just like so much nicer.
Yeah.
I want more for Susie, though. Like, Susie feels shortchanged in seasons 1 and 2. I hope that maybe that'll change in season 3. But at the very least in seasons 1 and 2. I really like Alex Borstein. I think Susie is an interesting character, particularly, again, of the time, like speaking of that time and sort of that sort of genderqueer dressing and sort of we haven't had much interrogation of like what her personal and her life is. The show.
Whoa, what do you mean? We have that big long when she goes to meet her brother and sisters and.
Oh no! Then we finally get to get to know her, which is great. But we
don't know about it's never said whether she's queer or not.
Yeah, we don't know about her intimate
She's
life.
addressed that this year. She was asked specifically that question.
In season 3?
No. In the actress
Alex
playing her
Borstein.
saying that people are what's going on with this character,
Yeah.
and she's just very much just saying that it's not interesting. It's not interesting to her. This is not something that she wants to do. Everything is. She's just very driven, and it's not. I mean, I don't know. I don't know where she got that. If she got a chance to create a character,
right.
I don't know where that came from, but that's what she said.
Which I have mixed feelings about because, on the one hand, queer representation is important and I kind of want to have more, I kind of want her to be and for that to be addressed. But on the other hand, I don't because I just love when people get to be queer or not queer or gender nonconforming or just dress like Valerie Solanas for no reason. I'd like that not be addressed. Just, it just is.
Yeah.
And she very much, like Susie just is. And Alex Borstein does such a great job of just embodying that character and the juxtaposition with Midge and her fanciness and her perfectness. And it's just so beautiful.
Their friendship, the lines off each other.
Yeah.
Well, and the class difference between them and like how it gets explored and how it doesn't get explored, I think is like super interesting as well. And I think like in someone else's hands, they might have tried to create this sort of like romantic tension between the two.
Absolutely.
And that's not part of, so far anyway, from what I've seen, that's not really part of it because like Susie is both her employer and her employee. And that manager and mentor role is so interesting and so complicated, and especially when you only have like one star, but now this like Jane Lynch's character sort of is, anyway, I don't know where that's going to go. I have
a coworker who after watch Mrs. Maisel came in and went, "Oh my God, you're Susie."
Oh.
And I hadn't seen it yet.
Oh.
Yeah. And so then I started watching. I was like, oh, wow, that is, that's something.
That's a lot to lot to unpack. Really, you need to take that friend out for a drink and ask a few questions.
Yeah,
I mean there's elements of Susie, I think, in you for sure.
Yeah, no, I can. I wasn't like I was what? It wasn't like
of course,
completely out of left field.
It was people weren't like you're the estranged husband. No.
Yeah, no, and they didn't say I was Midge Maisel, that's for sure. So, which really would have been weird, much less than Susie. No, I could see it was quite fun, and I wondered if there are a lot of. Like, I mean, I think mostly what he was just getting at is I do dress androgynously. I'm loud, and I tell jokes all the time. So I just think there's probably a ton of women that are being told this.
Yes.
But who are really not like Susie.
No, but it's...
you know what I mean? But it's just like... There's so few of, as you said, those characters on TV.
Absolutely.
That that there's just like a bunch of women all being called Susie now.
Definitely.
Yeah. One of the things that I liked a lot, I was doing a bit of research, and so Rachel, the actress, the actor who plays Midge, was like did some studying to figure out her character, and she sort of modeled her. One of the people she modeled her off of was pioneering comic Jean Carroll, this beautiful, graceful woman who wore pearls and gorgeous dresses and sang a little. And so this is from this New York Times profile. Jean wrote her own material and came to prominence in the 40s and 50s. This is one of Jean Carroll's best known jokes, and I love it so much. The thing that attracted me to my husband was his pride. I'll never forget the time I saw him, standing up on a hill, his hair blowing in the breeze, and he too proud to run and get it.
That's a good one.
I laughed so hard when I read that joke. And I thought that was wonderful. And I was like, yeah, because in like the 40s and 50s, like you were not supposed to make fun of your husband in public.
No.
You were supposed to be like a certain kind of
Another
wife.
Jean. We went through this before. A very popular girl's name in the 40s.
Yeah.
There's like a million Jeans.
Right.
And a lot of different spellings of Jean.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
It's great. But yeah,
the Sarah of its day.
The Sarah, yes. And I mean, obviously, Joan Rivers was also sort of like a part of that, but you know, a little bit later, not in the 40s and 50s. But I just thought like it's this idea that none of these women existed is kind of false, and it's like
very much so,
continuing to erase women from comedy.
Yeah.
So I wish like reporters were doing better reporting, a little bit.
Yeah, there was a quote that you sent me earlier, that the thing about she's an imagined predecessor to Tig Notaro.
A foremother that modern comedy should have had. Midge is a reverse-engineered ancestor of an Ali Wong or a Tig Notaro.
I was like, what?
I know, I
had such a strong
They're
response to that
just two
quote.
female comedians.
Yeah, the only two you've ever seen.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a real wanky
It
start
really
to
is, yeah.
Yeah.
But the difference between somebody like a Phyllis Diller who mocked
Yes,
her,
yeah.
made a career out of
Yeah.
mocking
Yeah,
her
yeah.
husband, but she did it as this character with these wigs and hats, and you know, my mom used to have this book because my mom was briefly a Mary Kay lady.
Nice.
So she had this book that was celebrities with and without makeup,
Oh.
and the Phyllis Diller one, like absolutely unrecognizable. And I was
Yeah.
always so fascinated by that idea that she created this character to do her comedy, and I think, and that's what the Jane Lynch character. Whose name I'm forgetting, Lemon. Anyways, it'll come back to me. But that character on the show is, you know, this.
Her character is basically called Fat Mama or something like that.
Yeah, you get to make fun of people. You get to be adored. You get to be respected as a comedian, but only if you're this weird caricature. You're Minnie Pearl. You're, you know, even like Toady Fields, you know, sort of much more gregarious and whatever. Whereas Jean Carroll was this classy lady, right? And if that's what she's modeled on, like, yeah, you didn't see a lot of, until Rita Rudner, I guess, much later, you didn't see a lot of like fancy lady comedians that were, you know, pretty and glamorous, but then talking about these things that were very much not what women were supposed to talk about.
You know what's interesting though is that this show is set, I think, pretty much at the same time almost as what the Dick Van Dyke Show would have been on TV, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
58? Was that when the Dick Van Dyke Show?
I mean,
Based on
question.
the pedal pushers alone, I'm going to say yes.
But from what I read, that was quite groundbreaking that they worked with a female comedy writer, Rose Marie.
Yeah.
Right? That there were, that even her character was always unlucky in love.
Right.
Right? She was always coming in, how'd that date go? You know, she never caught him. Never, you know.
Yeah.
And that was like,
Never caught him.
And that is your punishment for being funny.
Exactly.
You will be perpetually single and having to go on bad dates.
Right. Or if you can, you know, in Nichols and May situation where you're part of a duo, so then that's acceptable because you're still attached to a man, right?
Yeah.
So you're either a ridiculous caricature or you are, you know, legitimized by being a duo, right?
Gracie and
George Burns and Gracie Allen, Nichols and May. I mean, tons of, you know, that came out of vaudeville acts like that.
So I do find that as I got into season 2, I found the marvelousness a little bit cloying.
The Catskills stuff?
The Catskills, I mean, actually, you know what? I'm a sucker for anything set in the Catskills because of Dirty Dancing. Like, this is a fascinating world to me where apparently a bunch of people can just go and live a whole, like...
It's like summer camp still.
Yeah,
it was
for
very,
adults, but like it's so foreign to me.
Camp,
I just love it. So the Catskill stuff, it didn't even bother me that much. But like there's just the fact that she Midge can do no wrong. I have found a little bit irritating. But I think I'm not the only one because I've included a little bit of like some essays. Emily Nussbaum, who you know, Pulitzer Prize winning like TV critic, wrote a big essay about it, and I'm not going to read it all, but she just talked about how it had sort of like begun to bother her a little bit that it flattens a character to continue to just be hyper idolized as opposed to sort of like entrenched with a bit more nuance. But from what I understand, in season 3, and this is the only time I'm going to be like, give me a little hint, that Midge gets a bit more anti-hero in season 3 leading into season 4.
Yes, I will confirm that.
Okay, thank you.
Not my first half of it. I haven't. But I guess I kind of, I hear all of that. I guess in my mind it was always just because that was what she thinks she's supposed to be doing.
Yeah. So
always, always, always working to make sure everyone is happy, everything is perfect. And I don't know if I would say that she accomplishes all that, because that stand-up routine with her dad is one of the more awkward, uncomfortable things ever. And she had to know.
Still very funny, though.
It was funny. But she had to know then that she was, like, that she might end her relationship with her family.
Right.
Right?
Yeah,
Like, that's not perfect to me. Like, that scene was really hard, and then he wouldn't talk to her, and we knew how much she cares about her family. So I was just kind of devastated. I didn't know how that was going to turn out.
I figured it would turn out fine, but again, because of the fairy tale aspect and the sort of superhero aspect, you know, I was like, no one can resist her. Like, really?
Yeah, but
like that sort of makes it feel as if like I wasn't worried about their relationship. I figured it would be fine.
It's on the one hand, I think, quite refreshing to see a female character that is as confident as she is.
Oh, I love that.
That bounces back as quickly as she does. But on the other hand, I'm a little bit like, oh, all right. First of all, her ratio, like, I think she bombs twice.
Yeah.
Which is not, those are not accurate numbers. She's got a pretty good track record of hitting it out of the park when she steps on stage, which, like I said, I'm a little bit of, but that's part of the fantasy of it and part of the escapism of it for me too, right? But she really does, even when she like almost wrecks her friend's wedding and the thing with her dad and all that.
That wedding was terrible behavior.
That was first season though.
She was like, I'm so sorry, and then the next day everything's, things don't keep her down for very long, and people don't stay mad at her.
The show is
she's marvelous.
Marvelous, exactly.
Yeah. We both just
marvelous.
That makes sense. I get that, and I do. Yeah, and I think it's just I want to like, maybe this is why I haven't jumped on season 3 though. Is like that I'm just like I'm gonna wait until I'm in a space where I can tolerate all of the sugariness of, and I think because like particularly the oh my god, the Zachary Levi's character in season 2 and how
I keep calling him Shazam because I love that movie so much.
And just
Which there's going to be a Shazam too.
Is there? Okay,
yeah,
great.
Sorry.
No, I'm happy for you.
Okay.
I just love that Zachary Levi's character is just, he's also very, sort of so studly and...
No, clear this up. I so thought they were playing him gay.
I was just going to say, the entire season, I was
thought
like,
that was the purpose, that he wouldn't date any of these
And then when they
women.
started kissing, I was like, what's
and
happening
his mother
now?
keeps saying he's a bachelor, and I thought that was the euphemism.
There's a lot of stuff that they set up that they don't follow through
that one
on.
was really bad.
That I'm still waiting, even after seeing all 3 seasons. There are a few things that I'm like, wait a minute. And that never paid off. There's a mention... I'm going to say it, and I can't remember which season it's in, but I feel okay about saying it because it is the only time that it's mentioned and never comes back. But there's a mention of, like, Susie was like, why do you think I went to law school? And you're like, wait, what? And it's never mentioned again. Like, there's all kinds
I do not remember that Susie went to law school.
And it's, okay, well, sorry, spoiler.
No, it's fine.
Cut it out. But it's, there's a bunch of stuff like that, right? The whole ridiculous... okay, now I have to be careful. Noah, the brother, is his job addressed in season 2?
Yeah.
He's what?
Yeah, the secret agent
in the CIA. There's stuff that kind of like drops in and then either isn't mentioned again or just like comes in when they need it.
Weirdly, like the plot device to get her dad to quit his job.
Right.
Was that the sort of like how he all of a sudden started being, because they were treating him differently? Because his son
But you know what?
Yeah.
I don't think there's a lot of logic to a lot of the things, and I ain't mad at it, to be honest, really. Like, it's that kind of fantasy of, you're like, now we're going to Paris. Oh, now you're going to be a revolutionary? Cool. Like,
you know what? That's true. Like, if I can just think about it literally as a fairy tale, and, like, I feel
like season 3 is I'll just say this quickly, too, because I haven't said anything about season 3, is a little less on the fantasy.
Well, it is, but, there's there's lots of interesting conversations about, you know, is it a feminist show? Is it, you know, a historical addressing of, you know, women's place in society? Like, and yes, it's all those things, but it's not. I feel like it's a little like the Spice Girls. Like, remember how Spice Girls?
Girl power?
Yeah, because they were all like, no, it's girl power. It's all, and we were all like, right, girl, and girl power, not so much. But you know, it's you're like, sure, yeah, you can spin that, yeah. But it's also you're dancing around in your cute outfits, and that's what that is, right? So I find it's a bit like that.
But that's not even. There's that small. Speaking of things that didn't carry through, her little activism when she's walking through the park.
Yeah. When she
meets
shows...
Jane Jacobs.
Yes.
Well, there with like Lenny Bruce.
Right.
Like all of a sudden Jane Jacobs is there. I mean, that weird little tiny bit of activism is the only time I really see her kind of participating in a larger issue than herself.
She's the kind of person who I think would be the type of woman who would be like, oh, I've never identified as a feminist necessarily, but I've certainly benefited from it.
Yeah.
Well, and she definitely comments on it. I have to pull up my phone because I made a note of this because she doesn't, you know, she's not a self-proclaimed women's liber or anything like that, right? Well, that wouldn't be at that time anyhow. But she has this great, in one of her sets where she says, comedy is fueled by oppression, by the lack of power, by sadness and disappointment, by abandonment and humiliation. Now, who the hell does that describe more than women? Judging by those standards, only women should be funny. Because it comes after this.
Wow,
that's right.
With
I
the
remember
dudes.
that.
Isn't that great? I was like, rewind, make a note. Yeah. So she's, you know, she speaks those things.
Yeah.
She speaks those things. She does forget that people of color exist.
Not in season 3.
Good, thank God.
But even so, it's still like, it's still a little.
I'm not saying it's perfect.
Yeah.
But I just meant there are other
no,
people.
definitely. But that's why again, it's the Woody Allen comparison for me, right? Of like Woody Allen's New York, where everybody's white and you know sort of nebbish, and you know, like it's that world that you go, well, just a second.
Well,
but
and Mrs. Maisel has had some criticism there. Like we don't. We're running out of time, so unfortunately, we're not going to get majorly into it. But I recommend people just check out this piece that was written in the LA Times by Paul Brownfield. It's called "Shtick, Stereotypes, and Self-Parody: How the Marvelous Mrs. Maisel Gets Jewish Culture Wrong." And I think that's like there's a lot of really like valid points. Makes space for a lot of that sort of cultural criticism. I do not have any sort of like lived cultural experience of Judaism, so can't comment on that. But I think it's a good article that like brings up some good stuff.
Mm-hmm. No, it was definitely an interesting read for sure. Yeah.
But I do like it. I do like the reading of it as sort of like a show in which a woman in the late 50s, coming into the 60s, is discovering like that her own power is inside her all along. And I know that
it's like Dorothy tapping her red shoes there.
Well, it is kind of like it is kind of that superhero thing, you know? Like and I think like just because sometimes it feels a little too escapist for me, maybe there's something that I could spend a little bit of time with myself being like, why does everything have to feel so punishingly real? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Why can't I just sort of like have and still make space for the criticisms of it?
Yeah,
I think those are fair.
Yeah.
Those exist, and I'm, you know, as a critic, I am going to criticize.
I have 2 words for you. Love, Actually.
This is a year-round conversation.
Yeah.
Yes, it should be.
You have managed to work your way
always
through those things.
Yeah.
But it's very much, you know, watching it in 2019 or 2020, there's lots of stuff that's relevant to women today, for sure. And I always love when we look at historical things and we're like, oh, that's exactly the same. Or comedy hasn't changed much for women, or, you know, those kinds of thoughts. But it also is very much of that time when women were trying to establish themselves as something other than wives and mothers and, you know, whatnot. And again, I'm sorry, I'm going to pull up my quotes again.
No, do. That's great.
There's the most beautiful scene in the pilot when Susie, after she bails Midge out and they sit down at the gaslight, and she says, you know, I've seen this twice in my life. where a comic comes on stage and you just know that they're going to be huge and that they're going to do something important. And the first one was Mort Saul, and the second one was last night when I saw you. And she's like, no, that's not. You don't know that.
Yeah.
And she's like, I know it as sure as I know I'm going to die alone, or something like that, right? But then she has this she's like, oh, don't say that. And she has this beautiful line where she says, I don't mind being alone. I just do not want to be insignificant.
Yeah, that's
and that
lovely.
was such a gut punch, because that's Susie, right? She's like, I'm just gonna make my mark. She's got a little, she's so feisty and but it's also Midge, right? She's like, I did all the things I was supposed to do. Yeah. I was the perfect wife. Yep. Yep. I even was the perfect wife in the dirty wife in the bedroom, and then the perfect wife making the brisket. I did all the things, and still he left me, and I ended up here. And so even when we do all the things we are told to do as women and we are unsatisfied, then, you feel insignificant. And so it's her story too. It's Abe's story for sure. Yeah. It's all of them. Exactly. Which is why I say all of the characters have that beautiful journey where they're trying to figure out their place and their significance.
Yeah. That's lovely.
It is.
I love that line. It's beautiful.
And weirdly, why is this the first moment I thought the bar's named Gaslight?
Well, it's a famous bar in New York.
Also. But for a woman comedy.
Definitely. No, it's hilarious.
Yeah. For the entire
1,000%
existence,
we usually decide, does a show pop? Does The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel pop?
For me, yes. It definitely pops. Pop, 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 pop.
Yeah.
Poppity pop,
I'm popping
pop,
over
pop.
here.
It pops for me too. Yeah.
I mean, as you said, there are some things, as we loved Gilmore Girls too.
Oh, 100%.
And there were a lot of things there.
A lot of things that are wrong there.
That percolate even more later. There's still, she, as a director and a writer and a creator of these people and scenes, she gets me in places like you're reading those lines out. Yeah. Just in understanding these really beautiful small moments. And I think that's what she's really good at.
Agreed.
She does create these huge, vast worlds. But when she gets down between two people,
relationship,
it's just...
And she never forsakes parents.
No, she does.
Parents are a big deal.
Kids, on the other hand.
Yeah, kids.
Can we just talk for 1 second about
Ethan
how you...
and Esther, we never see them.
You almost never see them. And then when they go to the Catskills, and I'm like, where's the baby?
Yeah, I know. Did they bring Zelda to the Catskills?
No, and the baby just gets left in the car.
She does not seem to be a good mom.
No.
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 Right? No, definitely not a good mom.
No, or what we would consider,
No. And we also cannot ignore that she wouldn't be able to do what she does without the privilege that she has and two sets of grandparents that she has, right?
100%.
Anyone who's a parent who doesn't have grandparents nearby is very jealous watching those two sets of grandparents looking after those kids
plus
all the time.
help, plus all the...
Yeah.
Honestly, it's kind of... I mean, I understand why they made a show in which she has 3 children, but I'm also just like, meh. Like, this is why I like shows that don't saddle people with kids, because sometimes they have to deal with those kids, and very rarely is it done in meaningful ways. Thank you, Morgan, so much.
Thank you for having me,
Morgan.
We love to leave our episodes on something we recommend. Can you please tell me what you would like to recommend?
I sure can. I can recommend the book that I'm reading right now, which is by my lovely friend Bill Richardson.
Oh.
And it's called I Saw 3 Ships, and it takes place in the West End of Vancouver. It was a bunch of short stories that he wrote separately, and then years later brought them all together and realized that they actually all linked. So they're situated with these 3 apartments in the West End. And I was a West End dweller for 15 years or so. And it's kind of the neighborhood that has my heart. And it has changed so much. So it's kind of like a beautiful historical look back, but also... Yeah, it's kind of this love letter to the West End. My coat that I wore in today that I always get amazing compliments on was bought from a drag queen's garage sale in the West End.
Perfect.
And, it's just, it really is that kind of slice of Vancouver's beautiful West End. And it's a lovely read.
That's great. Thank you. Lisa, how about you?
Yeah, so I have, I think I recommended the book by Ronan Farrow, Catch and Kill.
You did.
And now he has a podcast.
Yes.
There's only, I think, about 4 or 5 episodes up now, but if you were interested in some of the people that he interviewed, and some of the people who came forward after he wrote, who weren't ready to tell their stories, and they are now. Huh. And so they are long episodes of interviews that are really extraordinarily hard to listen to and super important. And I don't know where we're all going to end up on this journey, but I think that Ronan Farrow is going to make an effort to make sure that if there's a woman out there with a story to tell, she'll be on his podcast.
Yeah.
I like it.
And it's really good.
Yeah, no, that's wonderful. That's really great. I would like to recommend, so there is a podcast that we love that has come to join us at the podcast festival a couple of years in a row now. It's called The Illusionist. And they did their touring episode that they did live on the road is about the word they, which was Merriam-Webster's word of the year last year. Because we are now fresh in 2020. But I want to carry the energy of they into 2020, and it will remain there forever into the future, 2021, 2022. We're really working towards those singular gender-neutral pronouns. They weren't going to release it, but they are as a special like fundraiser episode through Radiotopia, and this is like the way that you can hear the podcast that they recorded about they, and it's really a wonderful experience. It's so thoughtful. It's so funny. It's heartbreaking and creative, and just like a linguistic treasure. And so just go listen to it. The Illusionist by Helen Zaltzman is fantastic. And I'm so glad everyone gets a chance to hear it, because I think it's actually like one of the most important hours of podcasting I've ever witnessed.
Wow. Okay.
It's quite an endorsement.
Yeah, it is very much.
Thanks.
I'll allow it.
I'll allow it. You took over the podcast real quick, Morgan.
Yeah.
It's kind of how I do things.
Control.
Thank you again so much for joining us. We really appreciate it. If people want to find you, do you want them to find you, or are you secret?
Well, not like at my house, but yes, you can find me at morganbrayton.com, and on social media, Instagram and Twitter and all that as just Morgan Brayton.
And the Lady Show has a Just for Laughs Northwest comedy show.
Absolutely. February 16th, which the next day is Family Day. So it's on Sunday.
Perfect.
But the next day is a holiday. So
perfect.
Great.
Yeah.
Okay.
You'll definitely see me there. So
Yay.
come hang out.
Oh, I can't sing. I'm sorry.
Thank you so much, everyone, for listening. You could, if you like, rate and review us on iTunes. 5 stars.
5 stars.
You can also listen to us on Spotify and Stitcher, whatever else. But rate and review us. Thanks.
And our 5-star general is Andrea Gin, also known as the producer, and we record at the Vancouver Public Library. Thanks for listening.
Thank you.